Welcome, everybody, to the 7 Minutes to Better Selling podcast, our first episode of 2022. So excited to be here with all of you. So we have a unique opportunity here to take all of the best that we heard in 2021, where we listened to some of the best sales leaders and sales executives, some of the most interesting entrepreneurs, and from a leadership perspective, just a pure leadership perspective, we heard from some really intriguing minds. And so we do a really nice job at that. And so we bring all of this to you in the form of like bite-sized pieces for you to listen to. So without further ado, I'm going to dive right into some of the greatest thoughts that we pulled out from 2021, and I'm going to do it from a few of our greats. So our first call, if you remember, that was a bit ago, started with Jim Lake. And Jim Lake is my brother. And he talked about this idea of don't wing it. So many times salespeople, because you have this skill set of connecting with people, you feel like it's okay to just wing it. He said, just take a minute, just take 2 minutes prior to the meeting and prepare yourself. And so I think that's a really good, easy thought for you to take with you in 2022 and beyond. We rolled into session 2 with Gary Baker. Gary Baker, who runs this amazing practice out in the Midwest of the United States, has this philosophy of relational selling. And he says the best way to know if you're effective with relational selling is if you're asking questions that have nothing to do with you getting anything, you as the salesperson getting anything, and everything to do with the person you're talking to, your client or prospective client, getting what they want. Nothing to do with you, everything to do with them. And he gave us some really good ideas to consider on that podcast. And we'll talk about ways to execute that on the Developing the Next Leaders website, or to listen to that on the Developing the Next Leaders website. We went into this social selling expert, a guy by the name of Dan Green. And what he said is, I give everything I have on social media. I give my absolute best to the world out in social media. And what I have learned is I get the best of others back. Like, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just putting my best out there. And it just seems that I get the best back from everyone else. And so the philosophy there, or the thought there, is what things can you be doing from a social perspective, social media perspective, or just from a face-to-face or virtual perspective, where you're giving more to your clients? What things are you giving to them? And if you're giving more to them, you don't even have to ask for it. They tend to just reciprocate because they know that's the right thing to do. We moved over to two podcasts in particular, kind of connected to each other because they had such similar philosophies. Mikelette, who is this entrepreneur based in Massachusetts, who is growing his practice exponentially, and he's got a fitness mind, and he does all of these things in the fitness world. And so many other of those gym owners are struggling. So many of those business owners are struggling, and he is expanding so amazingly. And then Marty Ferguson, who is a partner at Accenture and an amazing professional, now is an academic teaching at WPI in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Worcester Polytech Institute, which is a renowned school for training engineers. And he has this lofty position on teaching people how to be entrepreneurial with these engineering type ideas that they all have. And so they both had this concept of listening. When you listen, purely listen to someone, not to sell anything, much like Gary Baker taught us. When you purely listen, not to sell, but to learn, you can find things out about people, and they'll never forget you for them, and they'll never leave you, and they'll always be with you, and they'll always remain loyal, except they won't think they are being loyal to you. They're just wanting to be near you because you listen really well. And so how do you listen really well? Go back to what Gary Baker said, is you have to ask questions that don't necessarily benefit you, but benefit them. And that's that idea of the equation of how you listen, and how you listen a whole heck of a lot better. We talked to Mahesh Chand, who is just a wonderful entrepreneur. Many of you on this podcast know Mahesh. Mahesh does an amazing job of talking about innovation on the podcast there. And so innovation is kind of like a nebulous term. There's lots of things that innovation can mean, or you can think about with innovation. But what he said was, look at your day, meaning yesterday. Look at your week, meaning last week. Look at your month, last month. Look at your year, last year. And where weren't you getting ideal results? And Mahesh said, If you weren't happy with something and you had the courage to identify what it was, what can you do to innovate? What can you do to get better at it? What a great question to be asking at this time of year. And Mahesh did a great job at articulating that. And then we moved to Alan Stein Jr. And Alan Stein Jr. is a real good friend, and he does an amazing job at speaking all over the world on leadership and motivation and training. And he comes from his basketball background, and he's expanded this like basketball little world he lived in into corporate leadership. And he said one like power thought is, he said, if we purely focus on our goals, it is going to erode our ability to make connections. How's that for a selling thought? If we're fully focused on our goals, then we're going to erode our ability to create real connections with people. And so I just love that thought. And then as we track for the last few podcasts, we talked with Matt Cahill. Matt Cahill is a 20-year veteran, served in our military, and we had that call during Veterans Day. And what he talked about, and it was much like the call right after Matt with Mikelette, is taking a leap. Matt leaves the military and says, I need to keep serving. And the way I'm going to serve is I'm going to serve ex-military and help them get right in all of the things they need to get right when they're back in civilian clothing and when they're back doing what they do, like not fighting wars and protecting our country. And he said, I need to serve those people. And so he's built two businesses, fully charitable businesses that give back to those folks and their families. And both of these businesses have grown amazingly. And then Mike Gillespie talked about taking, the next step and having the courage to take that next step or take the leap. And what Mike said specifically is, who are those biggest clients that you have, those whales that you're so afraid to call? Who are those folks? Take a leap, reach out to them, but reach out to them with something that they want to know, not that you want to get from them. And then lastly, we had Mark Magnac, who's the president of Lego, which is this technology that helps people train their staff and train their clients from a video perspective. And people have been doing this for like Zoom calls and phone calls and emails and all of those things. Well, this is video, like video voicemail or video email. And it is a really, really cool technology. He talked about how he built that. And he said, what I realized is I have to orchestrate my life. I have to get all of the players in my life doing the things that they're best at. So I'm going to wrap with that, is take one or two of these ideas and put them into your practice, now in January. Do it now. On our website, developingthenextleaders.com, there is a list of every one of these podcasts, and they're all edited down to 7 minutes so that you can listen in these bite-sized pieces so that you can get all of these tidbits on a consistent basis. I encourage you to get on there and listen to these. Good selling, everyone, and have a great year in 2022.